You know, the joke in evangelical households now is about essential oils, that all the women are into essential oils. My wife gets essential oils from doTERRA. She does not believe they magically cure things, but she appreciates the sense. And, you know, for example, they have something called a breathe oil that the kids and I use in humidifiers when we're sick and congested and during allergy season in particular. And it does work, but they're not some miracle. But I gotta tell you, I have been approached by more than one woman from an evangelical household who has informed me that if my wife will use certain essential oils, it will cure her cancer. Now, if you're new to the program, you need to know my wife has stage 4 lung cancer. And it is an incurable form of lung cancer. It's genetic. If my wife were to go get a lung transplant tomorrow, because the tumors are all in her lungs, they're nowhere else, they haven't spread in her body, they're just in her lungs. If she were to get a lung transplant tomorrow, as her cells began to replace and regenerate the cells of those of the original lungs, her lungs would begin to metastasize these tumors like she has. It's genetic. She's never smoked a day in her life. And yet, without knowing this, I've been assured by more than one person that they have the cure for my wife's cancer, and it most often involves either drinking hydrogen peroxide or essential oils. And I know people mean well. And I don't think it's a coincidence. And y'all, ladies in particular, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm really not. But I don't think it's a coincidence that most of the people who raise the subject actually do tend to be women. And they all tend to be within deeply Christian households. And they've given up on modern science. Now, I have a problem with this, because increasingly I'm encountering people who've decided, I'm not going to vaccinate my kids. Now, I know people who are hesitant for the MMR because the fetal tissue research back in the 1970s that essentially was an aborted child whose fetal tissue was used to propagate the original MMR vaccine. And I just view that as what someone meant for evil, God meant for good. Think of the massive number of lives that have been saved from the MMR. Robert Kennedy has been advanced to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He was on with Sean Hannity the other day, and he said that like older people tend to need a booster, that the MMR doesn't keep them immune. Actually, according to the data, overwhelmingly, once you're vaccinated as a kid for measles, you have lifetime immunity. Only in rare circumstances does someone lose that measles immunity. It's possible for mumps, but almost impossible, unheard of, for someone to lose measles immunity. He's just simply wrong about this. There are doctors in America today who will tell you with a straight face that transgenderism is an immutable characteristic, that someone is born transgender. And it is a medical doctor who will tell you this, often a medical doctor who gets a lot of money for performing gender reassignment surgeries and giving quote-unquote gender-affirming care. And they're quacks. But there are also doctors out there who will tell you that the MMR vaccine and the battery of vaccines kids get cause autism. Robert Kennedy is ordering yet another research project into autism. You know, it's been studied many times in the past. But people want to believe what they want to believe. Take seed oils, for example. There are a lot of people out there, many of my listeners included, who have decided that seed oils are far worse than, for example, beef tallow. Actually, there's a whole bunch of research that says that's not true. Seed oils are actually better than trans fats, better than animal fats, things like that. And yet they don't believe it. They refuse to believe the data. The data is rigged. The data is cooked against them. People just want to believe what they want to believe. I have a problem with all of this for a very simple reason, and it's from my faith. I believe that the Bible's real. I really do believe, like I believe the whole Adam and Eve thing, Noah's Ark. I actually do believe it. I'm sorry if that turns you off, and you suddenly think I'm a dumb person. I believe it's true, and I believe in the resurrection of Jesus, and he said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life," and it's that truth part that matters, because if he's the truth, there is an objective truth. There is a ascertainable way to define what is true and what is real. And a lot of people are getting shaped by their algorithms on social media into believing things that are not true, and you can't dissuade them from it. They genuinely believe that it's true, and they will not be deterred from believing that it is true. Let me see if I can find this video yesterday. Mr. Kobe, am I being run in delay by chance? Good, because I want to play this audio, and I'm like 99% sure that it doesn't have a bad word in it. But I saw it yesterday, and now I want to play it. This is a guy, and he's a liberal, and he is confronting a college student about the government. Let me play you this audio. This is just about the government. Sam Cedar is a progressive, and he is engaging with a college student about the government and the size and scope of the government, and I want you to listen to this conversation.
I'm talking about Trump's rescission of these orders on these agencies.
If you received a tax cut as an employer, wouldn't you hire a person of color?
Dude,
if you could pay them less?
Listen, we're talking about government agencies that do not get tax cuts. They don't. Government agencies.
They don't.
No,
yes, they do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about
every private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't pay taxes. Government agencies operate are funded by the government.
That is not true. That is not true.
Now, you all know that young man is an idiot. You do. You all recognize this. He's confused the public sector and the private sector, the public sector, and he believes he's actually confusing publicly held companies. Publicly held companies aren't actually government controlled, and he doesn't understand that. And he actually he's arguing that a government agency pays taxes and gets tax benefits for hiring non-white people. A government agency is part of the government. The government doesn't pay taxes to itself. And yet this kid doesn't know it. This kid insists that it's true. There are people today, because of their algorithms and their feeds, who have begun to believe things that simply are not true. And you can't dissuade them from the fact. Here's the fact. The polio vaccine has saved so many people from polio. We don't see polio as a thing anymore. And yet there's increasing numbers of people who think, well, polio is not a thing. I don't have to give my kid this vaccine. Wait until your kid gets polio and you will have that regret hang over your life for the rest of your life. Or if your kid gets the measles and winds up getting scarred, or in the case of this kid in Texas, dying. The MMR vaccine has saved countless lives and saved a whole lot of kids from disfigurement. And yet, suddenly, because someone saw something on the internet, they know best. Now, part of the problem we need to acknowledge is that the arrogance of government bureaucrats and healthcare experts has caused part of this. They equated the COVID vaccine with other vaccines. They used the word vaccine for the COVID vaccine, and it didn't stop people from getting COVID. It didn't actually operate as a vaccine. And people have used that to undermine the whole case of vaccines. Robert F. Kennedy has been a major conspiracy theorist about vaccines for years. Because of the mass illegal immigration into this country over the last number of years, tuberculosis is on the rise in this country. Measles are on the rise in this country. Other infectious diseases that are easily preventable with vaccines are on the rise in this country. And yet people, particularly in Christian communities, have decided that they are turning against modern medicine, that they know better by faith or by alternative medicines. They're going to save themselves and they're going to save their kids. And a lot of people are going to die because of it. A lot of people are going to be disfigured because of it. I'm not even sure what the solution is at this point, other than I think a lot of pastors probably need to get involved in this with their congregations, because there are a whole lot of people who have decided that they're smarter than their doctors, and they're smarter than prevailing conventional wisdom. And I guess where I draw the line on this is, let's take the COVID vaccine, which is 3 years old, and let's compare it to the MMR, which is 50 years old, or the polio vaccine, where we have a long history of this, saving lives. Now, I'm going to dive into something here at the very end of this monologue that's going to kind of disturb some of you. You know, there seems to be a rise in brain cancer. People are trying to blame it on cell phones, the iPhone, Bluetooth. I know more and more women who have had brain tumors. David Pollack from ESPN, formerly of ESPN, he announced his wife has a brain tumor. We have a dear friend who's battling one. I know many more people who diseases seem to be on the rise. Cancer seem to be on the rise. You know, maybe I shouldn't go there, but you know, there's a theological answer to some of this. Sin in the world produces disease. So we're further and further away from the garden and closer to the end times. We're going to see a rise in it. And part of what happens theologically, but also we see it in our daily life, is as we run down the clock on society, fewer and fewer people actually believe the truth. And it's not just people outside the church, the pagans, as the Christian would call them, but people inside the church as well. They no longer believe the truth. They go and get their ears tickled. The Bible warns repeatedly in the New Testament about people leaving the faith and getting their ears tickled. But it's not just the faith where people leave to get their ears tickled. It's leaving science, leaving sound medicine, leaving sound judgment. They go online and find people who tell them what they want to hear, who provide an order in the chaos, who string the lines together and provide them the comprehensive theory of everything that makes sense to them. And they feed off those people who delude them and abuse them. But they believe they found truth. So many people are out there and they believe they found truth, and that truth is actually a repackaged lie. Friends, we know what works in this country. We know free market economics elevate more people out of poverty than protectionism. We know vaccines prevent kids from getting terrible diseases that kill them. We know modern medicine isn't perfect, but we know it's better than the shamans and the essential oils. And we know that God gave us modern medicine to work. And we know that a lot of the people who tell you emphatically that prayer will save you will never walk through St. Jude's Hospital praying over the children to end their cancer. The truth is ascertainable, but I want all of you to wonder about how many people are leaving the real truth, the tried and the true, the stuff we know that works, because their ears have been tickled by an algorithm that's leading them astray to their detriment and the detriment of their families. It is a real problem that we need to figure out how to address.